Okay, I suppose we are all set. Ladies and gentlemen, I can see we've got 5 people participating in this particular channel. So I think 12 minutes for each presentation would be quite enough, so that afterwards we've got some time for discussions as well. Let me just adjust the speakers so I can hear you properly. Right. One more housekeeping aspect. Can everyone hear me?
Sure, we can.
Right. Can everyone announce their presence? So I'm sure everyone's here. Ms. Rajo, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Right. Very good. Right. Hello to you. Ms. Bandurina? Right. I see she's in, but I'm not sure if she can hear us. Ms. Bandurina, are you with us? Oh, yes, right. You're here, but your mic is muted. Fine. I can see Mr. Pahutsky is with us already. And very warm welcome. And then there is Mr. Muzafer Kural. Muzafer, are you with us? Right. Can't see Muzafer anywhere here. Right. We'll just proceed as we are now. So if Muzafer is not going to join us, I suppose we've got more leeway. So I think 15 minutes would be perfect for each presentation. So the rules of this panel are like in every other panel, but I understand this is a PhD candidate panel, so please do not be too uptight about your presentations. And after the entire presentation part is over, we'll have some time for, I hope, very fruitful discussions. People from the audience are also encouraged to submit questions either by raising hand or by writing it in the chat box or just by participating in person. So without any further ado, I'd like to ask the first participant, Ms. Natalia Potera, to present her subject being a new European strategy for the Indo-Pacific region. Ms. Potera, floor is yours, 15 minutes.
Sure, thank you so much. I will just open my presentation. Okay, I guess you can see that.
I can, yes.
Okay. Okay, right now should be perfect. So good morning, everyone. Actually, good afternoon. My name is Natalia Potera. I'm a PhD student at Adam Mickiewicz University in Poznan. First of all, I would like to say thank you so much for giving me the possibility to present my topic. Today, I will talk about a new European strategy for the Indo-Pacific region. Before I start, I would like to show you a part of the speech of Representative Josep Borrell. The world's center of gravity is moving towards the Indo-Pacific, both in geoeconomic and geopolitical terms. The futures of the EU and the Indo-Pacific are interlinked. Later, I will try to explain you what Borrell meant by saying that. So in my speech, I will try to answer 2 research questions. First, what influenced the shape of European strategy toward the Indo-Pacific region? And second, what obstacles the European Union faces in the process of shaping its relation with representatives of the region? So before I start, I would like to give you one question, one for me crucial question. What is the Indo-Pacific? Because it's important to have geographical know-how of the region. Indo-Pacific is a kind of new term. It was used for the first time by the administration of Donald Trump. Later, we used to say Asia and Pacific. Right now, we have this new term, Indo-Pacific. So what is? So it is a region generally from the eastern shore of Africa to the western coast of United States. However, for EU, we will not take United States in that group, but for example, we will include here Australia and China. So why this region is that important for European Union? As we can see, we have there 3/5 of world population. Second, it produces around 60% of global GDP. Then it is responsible for 57% of the total CO2 emission. And we can't forget that together with the EU, Indo-Pacific hold over 70% of the global trade in goods and services, and over 60% of foreign direct investment flows. It's also the home for 3 of 4 largest economic outside of European Union. I mean here, India, China, and Japan. Also, as we can see, it's the second largest export market of the European Union, and EU is already the top investor in the region. So this tragedy comes at the time of unprecedented rise of China at the global scale, and Indo-Pacific was actually has been ignored by the supranational union for decades. However, EU finally decided to change their vision and take more visible action towards Indo-Pacific. And there is several reasons why they decided to do that. So one of the reasons is the pressure from member states, namely Germany, France, Netherlands. And second reason is what I meant before, the political economic rise of China. So when we talk about the relation between China and EU, we should say that this relationship has been one that lacks a shared vision and common goals. And the European ideals and values do not find any takers in China, right? And Beijing continues to threaten the security of the region. Here we could mention, for example, the Chinese assault on Hong Kong's independence. So those values are totally different than the European one. And what I could say more, the China keeps promoting the kind of, I would say, alternative and flexible concept of, for example, human rights that is closer to autocracy rather to liberty. That's why this relation will not get stronger between China and European Union. This region is also important not only because of this economic, but also because of the fact that in that region, the paths of global hegemons are crossing. And I do not mean here only United States or China. We have more actors. We have Russia, we have India. I will talk about it a little bit later. So this strategy was launched on 16 September 2021. So it's totally new strategy. And there is several areas where EU want to take more visible action. Here we have just 7, but it's 7 main areas. We have much more. And as we can see, sustainable and inclusive prosperity, we have green transition, we have ocean governance, we have digital governance and partnership, we have connectivity, we have security and defense, we have human security. Later, I will try to explain a little bit more, and I will try to talk a little bit more about these points if we have a time. What is more important are the reasons behind the new EU Indo-Pacific strategy. So why EU decided to take more visible action? So the first point, growing economic and political importance of the region. As I said, it's responsible for 60% of global GDP. We can't forget also about the Asian tigers in the regions, right? So one of the strongest economics of the world. And second, we have India. So India is the biggest ally of the Western world in Asia, especially for United States, because they can stand against the China, right? And in the future, especially when we think about the population, it can be as strong as China is right now. So later, the second point, it is a new super region where the paths of world powers intending to maintain or gain hegemony cross. And I already mentioned that it's not only about the United States or not only about the China. We have Russia, we have India, and also the EU want to be a new strong actor. They want to also make some area of interest there. Chinese aggressive policies. So finally, European Union decided that they can't work in Indo-Pacific by themselves. First of all, it's not really the direct point of interest, the area of interest. And second, it's not also the area of influence. Later, they can't also they can't depend on the action taken by the United States. And also at the same time, they don't want to leave those countries alone because they are too weak, they are too small to take a real action, they are too weak to face Chinese hegemony. So finally, EU decided that with its support, this Asian country can stand against, and also EU wants to show that they do not have to choose just between the two sides. They do not have to choose between the West and the East, between the China and the United States. They have the third option. They have European Union with their own values, with their own ideals, and if these Indo-Pacific countries decide to cooperate, of course, they have to accept also those values. The next reason, a desire to make India and the Asian countries a counterweight to global hegemons. So I already mentioned before that India is one of the strongest ally of the Western world. However, India was kind of neutral during all of that time. They tried to make kind of neutral policy with all of the neighbors, also with China. Of course, we have kind of a different situation with Pakistan, but in general, India tried to be kind of neutral. And of course, we have the organization of the rising economically countries. And the last reason, the Indo-Pacific strategy could also be a counter-narrative to a Belt and Road initiative, so the flagship project of Jinping's administration. And when we talk about if strategy is the same as the project of Jinping, I wouldn't say so, because this Belt and Road initiative is based mostly on the economic ground. And of course, it affects also political area, but it's based mostly on the economic. And when we talk about the project made by the EU, we see that the economic, of course, it's important, but what is more important is the respect for values and for the international order. So which actions will be taken? We have to remember that this tragedy, it's not just another empty word, and the real actions are taken. It has been started or it will be started. And here we have some examples. For example, partnership and cooperation agreement with Malaysia and Thailand. Of course, we have much more agreements, but this one has been already started. Building more resilient and sustainable global value chains by diversifying trade and economic relations. EU trade negotiation with Australia, Indonesia, and New Zealand, including Green Alliance and partnership with Indo-Pacific partners. So we see that Green Alliance and in general environment, it's a very important part of the EU strategy, and always they highlight that. Strengthening ocean governance in the region. And what does it mean? What do I mean by saying that? It means that EU will try to help to prevent the ocean from illegal fishing and also from the piracy. Expanding the network of digital partnership, especially with Japan and South Korea. Then strengthen cooperation on research and innovation under Horizon Europe. Then stepping up implementation of the connectivity partnership, again with Japan, India, but also we have some other developed countries. Enhance naval development by EU member states. And it's not only about the financial help, right? EU said that we don't want to spend more money. We have some other project, we can use that money. Here, EU said that we can have a common workshop, we can give you some know-how, we can have like preference agreements, we can sell you some European equipment, for example. Then the last point, reinforcing support to healthcare system and pandemic preparedness for the least developed countries in the Indo-Pacific region. And that's especially important right now when we all struggle with the consequence of coronavirus. And it affected not only the policy, it affected the economic areas, it affected the social life. So EU decided that they are strong enough to help these countries. Main goals. So why did EU decided to take this action? So first and the most important point, strengthening multilateral cooperation. And I want to emphasize here that they want to cooperate with the whole region, because before there was some other agreements. There was agreements between, for example, France and Japan, between Germany and South Korea. But right now EU said we want to cooperate as a whole organization. We want to cooperate with the whole region, also with China. The next point is in concerns about Chinese domination. So as I mentioned before, EU wants to show that they have the third option. They do not have to choose. And also EU wants to show that we will help you. Just in case we'll help you, you don't have to depend only on the help given by the United States, for example. The next reason, reducing tensions in the region. Of course, we have many tensions, especially on the ground of minorities, and EU thinks that they are ready to help them to negotiate. They are ready to solve these problems. And next point, enhance cooperation in many areas, such as ocean governance, what I just mentioned before. Next point, intensified cooperation in multilateral fora. So that's something different than Belt and Road Initiative, right? Because EU said that we don't want to cooperate with you just on the economic ground. We want to cooperate with you, for example, on the basis of human rights or some other important for EU areas. Okay. And the last point, the last question, is the EU in the Pacific strategy directed against China? Well, officially, it's not directed against China. Officially, some EU representatives said like, it's inclusive. This strategy is inclusive. You are more than welcome to join our strategy. But first, we have to highlight that you have to accept our values. We have to respect. You have to accept the human rights. You have to respect the international law. You have to respect the independence of the countries, and why they can't make this relation with China stronger. One of the main points, one of the first points in the strategy is that Taiwan is our strongest strategic independent partner. So that's the point that China will never accept, because it's the biggest struggle for Jinping's administration, right? So if they joined the strategy, it would mean that they accept the existence of the independent state. So I guess that's all from my side. I try to make it as quick as possible because we have more people to talk. So thank you so much for your attention. And of course, later, if you have more questions to me, you are more than welcome, and I will try to answer. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much for excellent timekeeping. You made your presentation just in time, leaving 20 seconds for others to actually adjust. So thank you very much indeed for that. Very well done. I'm sure there will be plenty of questions to that particular subject, and as this is quite, as you say, en vogue at the moment. So yes. As we continue with the theme, ladies first, I'd like to ask Joanna Radzioch to present her paper. She's also from Adam Mickiewicz University, and she'll be giving us a pre-presentation about the popularity of e-voting in participatory budgeting in Poland during the COVID-19 pandemic. So I suppose about the influence of the pandemic for the whole process of e-voting and participatory budgeting in our country. So Ms. Radzioch, are you with us?
Yes, thank you. Can you see the presentation?
We most certainly can. 15 minutes. There you go.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon to everybody. My name is Joanna Radzioch. I am a PhD candidate in the doctoral school of the School of Social Sciences at Adam Mickiewicz University. I would like to present the presentation of the popularity of the e-voting and participatory budgeting in Poland during the COVID-19 pandemic. I obviously understand that the subject of the conference is beyond Europe, but the idea of participatory budget came to Europe from Brazil. It is in South America, of course. That is why I decided to present to you how the solution was introduced in cities with counties' rights in Poland. I must point out here that the creation of participatory budgets wasn't obligatory. It was until 2018, when the government introduced legal changes, which made the institution of the participatory budgets obligatory if those cities. At the beginning of my presentation, I would like to explain what e-voting is. As you can see, electronic voting systems are those which depend on some electronic technology for their correct functionality. Many of them depend on such technology, such technology for the communication of election data, depending on one or more communication channels in order to run election poses many technical challenges with respect to verifiability, dependability, security, anonymity, and trust. And voting is therefore voting using the internet. In one city in Poland, it is Płock, and text messages voting was also used in several editions. However, due to the low interest of the inhabitants, the city withdrew this possibility after 2 years. Self-government in Poland. Poland is a unified state with local government organized at 3 tiers, 16 voivodeship, 314 counties, and 2,478 municipalities. Some of the municipalities have counties' rights. It is because of the history or special role in voivodeships. And in my study, I am focused on those municipalities which have counties' rights. What is participatory budget? Porto Alegre, the capital of Rio Grande do Sul in Brazil, was the first city in the world to implement participatory budget as an act of putting participatory democracy into practice. Participatory budget was introduced there by the mayor in 1989 as an initiative of Union of Associations of Neighborhoods of Porto Alegre. But the first editions of the program were introduced only in 1991-1992. Participatory budget is a solution allowing citizens to participate in decision-making processes regarding investments that should be undertaken by local authorities. The participation should have its source in a dialogue with local authorities, in example, elected representatives of the local citizens, which makes participatory budget an interesting combination of representative democracy and indirect democracy. Why this solution became such a popular all around the world? The innovative character of the proposed solution is unquestionable. During the 1998 Istanbul Habitat's second United Nations Conference, participatory budget was considered a model form of activating society by local self-governments. This resulted from the successful implementation of participatory budget in Porto Alegre, such as in 1989-2004, citizens had 20% of the city's budget at their disposal. The percentage of households with access to the sewage system increased from 49% to almost 100%. The number of school children increased by 250%. Moreover, Porto Alegre became one of very few Brazilian cities with easiest access to water and electricity. And infant mortality, as well as illiteracy rates, were the lowest in the whole country. The Brazilian success inspired other cities all around the world to implement participatory budget. By 2008, around 200 self-governments implemented participatory budgets only in Brazil. However, what made participatory budget truly popular was its implementation also in other continents, Europe, Africa, or Asia. In 2019, it was implemented in over 3,000 cities all around the world. And I would like to show you the results of my survey. In August 2021, a questionnaire consisting of 21 questions was sent to city offices with counties' rights. In these cities, the participatory budget has been obligatory since 2018. officials answered questions regarding the assessment of the functioning of the participatory budget, as well as the changes caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. The survey was sent to 66 cities. An answer, unfortunately, was obtained only from 45. 4 of them refused to participate in the survey, while in 10 cities, there are no statistics on the type of the voting, so I cannot show you the results from those cities. How COVID-19 pandemic changed the participatory budgets in Poland. In 5 municipalities, participatory budgets didn't happen in 2020. And 8 municipalities decided not to organize traditional voting, but instead those cities implemented in-voting. 86 cities of municipalities noticed in 2020 more people voted in participatory budgets, and 74% of municipalities noticed more projects in participatory budgets. And here we can see the figure. And as we can see, online voting is becoming an increasingly popular solution in the participatory budgets, in my opinion. At the same time, it should be noted that initially only traditional voting was used. In 2014, as the number of participatory budgets increased, online voting was introduced. Interestingly, in some cities, only online voting was immediately introduced without traditional voting. That happened in examples in Jelenia Góra and Legnica in Low Silesia region. In 2020, several cities resigned from organizing their participatory budget due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which means that presented results are limited to 31 cities. However, as can be seen, the share of online votes in all voters cast in participatory budgets increases year by year. In 2020, the percentage share was 86.3%. This is a lot, considering that participatory budget is the only official solution in Poland that uses a voting. And the results, number of online voters increases, but only with the results of the participatory budget from 2021, it will be possible to make an exact comparison. And the second, in several municipalities due to the COVID-19 pandemic, it was decided not to organize traditional voting. And third, the COVID-19 pandemic increased the interest of residents in the participatory budget. I think it is even obvious because people spend more time in home and they have a chance to use e-voting. So it is just easier for them to have some time for the participatory budgets. Here's the bibliography. And thank you for your attention. If you have any question for me, of course you can ask. And also you have my email address on the screen. So please just let me know. You can send a message. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this interesting presentation. I must say again that it seems like the spirit of the city of Poznań is always with us, because everyone is keeping the time pretty strictly, which these inhabitants of this city are quite famous for, being a bit more uptight than the rest. Right, thanks for that. Now I think it's time for Miss Olena Bandurina, also from our university. So she will be giving us a brief presentation about the US involvement in the latest Israeli-Palestinian confrontations. I'm sure, again, this will be a very illuminating presentation. So without further ado, Ms. Bandurina, 15 minutes, off you go.
Yes, thank you so much. Do you see my screen, please?
Yes, we do.
Yes, wonderful. So thank you so much for this introduction. Yes, and I'm also a PhD student at Adam Mickiewicz University at the Faculty of Political Science and Journalism. And today I would be presenting the US involvement in the latest Israeli-Palestinian confrontations. So to start with, it's important to say that the ongoing conflict between Israel and Palestine happening for a long time, and without no doubts, the biggest variable to the relationships between the USA and Israel is this actually conflict that is happening between these neighboring countries. And both of them, they want to call their land as their home country. And currently, Palestinians occupy the Gaza and the West Bank of Israel, both of which, however, are still under Israeli military rule. So we can say that the airspace and the maritime access is still controlled by Israeli. Also, we should stress more our attention on the current confrontations that are happening in the region. So for several weeks, the tensions are building between them in Jerusalem, and also with the influence of recent events and the longer term, let's say, trends that also creating more violence in the region. And of course, this is the result of the increasing intense protests and violence on both the Israeli and Palestinian sides. Of course, they are blaming each other for initiating the conflict. And during the Ramadan, also Israel made several restrictions to the holy sites. So we can say that this conflict is not only because of the territorial ground, also because of the religious and political one. And of course, the court decision now on the higher court review to remove Palestinians, right, from the East Jerusalem. And we can say that if this will happen, this would be a really tragedy for Palestinian families, and because we will have more Palestinian refugees displaced. We also may stress attention on the importance of the US and Israeli relationships again. So, of course, the exchange of the consistent and substantial military aid the US gives annually to Israel, and the US also receives a Middle Eastern ally, right? Also with its Western values, intelligence, and military force. And the US has always considered the security and well-being of Israel one of the top priorities. So we could say that if the Biden administration will maintain the relationship with Israel, Israel will continue to be a US primary ally in the region. Of course, one of the research questions that I stress out today is how does the US involvement affect Palestinians? So the more precise question is the US alliance with Israel and involvement in the conflict. Does it actually hurt the Palestinian people and the possibility of peace to be created in the nearest future? And of course, we know that about the current confrontations in the region, we should remember about the 11-day war on Gaza, so between also Hamas and Israel. We know that thousands of people were killed, and also were damaged and destroyed the houses. And of course, a lot of scientists say that Egypt did it, and Hamas has just repaired the roads, and a lot of people became without electricity in the region. So they needed the full supply of electricity. But people are still dealing with the physical injuries and, of course, psychological one. A lot of children were displaced and damaged. So Israeli airstrikes killed a lot of people, and also the rocket fire from Gaza killed around 13 people in Israel. So we could say these confrontations that are happening there in the moment is really dangerous, and we could just analyze the involvement of the USA and how it could influence both sides. And we know that there are several interests that the United States pursue in the conflict, and of course in the region itself, as the Middle East is considered to be of a great importance for the United States, and not just because of the vital energy resources, but also it's the way to ensure the survival and security of Israel and Arab allies, not to create the conflicts in the region and maintain the stability. of course, it's countering terrorism. So we could say that due to the United States actions, the whole planet will be more safer, and also they're promoting democracy as well, and also they're reducing the refugee flows, the Palestinian refugee to another countries. So basically, what is the role of US administration in managing the conflict or diminishing the effects of the conflict? We could say that also the Secretary of State Blinken, and he should convince the Israeli Prime Minister and the chairman of the Palestinian Liberation Organization to stay in the discussion of a possible peace agreements and to respect the prospect of peace that could be taken. And of course, if talking more about the Blinken strategy of addressing this conflict, he's mainly concentrated on humanitarian aid to Gaza, and also he's addressing Israeli and Palestinian action that probably will reduce the tension and minimize or prevent the new violence in the region. And of course, the third phase that he's building right now is he's trying to improve actually the people's life. So through this humanitarian aid that will be provided to the region. And also the Biden administration indicated several times they will be cooperating with the other stakeholders on such global issues. We can say that an Israeli-Palestinian conflict, despite questions that, let's say, pertain to the effectiveness of dealing with the conflict, this could be the Middle East Quartet that they want to implement, like with the support of the United States, Russia, the EU, and the United Nations. This multilateral, let's say, body first was conveyed under the Bush administration, and he actually resumed meeting after a period of, let's say, dormancy driven by the Donald Trump administration. So we really hope that the Biden administration will change towards the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And of course, talking more precisely about the Biden's approach, it's important to stress that he also seeks active engagement with the Palestinians to advance progress toward conflict resolution. And of course, he's trying to, at the same time, to pressure Israel to end the war on Gaza. And he's at the same time sending clear messages that Jerusalem is still on the table. And also, we could say more that he's considering them as partners that they have the same rights, dignity, and interest in this land. And the settlements of also activity and annexation that undermine the prospects of two-state solution, because it's really difficult to deal with one region where a lot of Palestinian settlements, and of course, from one side, they have some rule over the settlements, but from the other side, Israeli totally control the air access. So that's difficult to say how far we can go to resolve this conflict, because a lot of people are dying and a lot of children are displaced. So this is real lives, and this is not just politics. So also, Biden administration, he seeks engagement with other stakeholders, as I mentioned before, and he supports the normalization deals with Israel and other Arab countries in order to strengthen the alliance in the region and push for the normalization of relationship between Israel and Palestine. Of course, to conclude, I would like to say that for now, the Biden's administration approach to the conflict appears to be very cautious. So he's going step by step, and he's trying to be a mediator in the region, and he's more focusing on working with Egypt and other partners to stabilize the ceasefire in the region. So it basically remains to be seen whether the administration will consider moving the conflict's priority on its foreign policy agenda. So in this way, the conflict will probably be resolved to some extent. Maybe some other agreements, mutual agreements will be signed. And also one of the also solution is appointing an envoy for the Middle East for dealing with these special cases. So I would like to thank you for the attention and your patience for my presentation, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed, Ms. Vandurina. That was a very illuminating presentation. There are many points we could discuss even at that moment. Yes, I am personally interested in the matters of the Arab world as well. So yes, that was especially interesting subject for me to hear. Nevertheless, it's always the same issue. The time is pressing. I hope we will have any time for discussions at this point. Nevertheless, it is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Christian Pachucki-Włosek from Jagiellonian University. Mr. Pachucki will be talking to us about the activities of Central Asian countries to strengthen internal and regional security in the face of events in Afghanistan. So basically, referring the changes in the Central Asian region after what some people may call the disaster happening in Afghanistan, certainly. So, Mr. Pachucki-Włosek, the floor is yours, 15 minutes maximum.
I hope you can hear me and see the presentation.
We do hear you, we see the presentation.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, my name is Christian Pachucki. I'm a doctoral student in the doctoral School of Social Science at Jagiellonian University on program Political Science and Administration. In my speech, I will focus on the internal and external problem of Central Asia countries that have a direct border with Afghanistan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. Internal problem included the threat of religion radicalism and the rise of opposition organization. In Turkmenistan, the threat from radical is low. This could only happen through an influx of radical pressures from Afghan territory. Therefore, in order to prevent such a situation, the Turkmen Security Service was obligated to conduct a briefing in the border areas, during which people were ordered to inform local authorities about the appearance for any non-native. Special scrutiny was given to citizens living nomadic lifestyle in the Karakum Desert. They were ordered to move to inhabited oases to prevent them from having any contact with the Afghan people. The Taliban seizure of power became a pretext to start fighting with opposition activity inside the country. A perfect example was the mass arrest in early October of opposition activists living in Turkey. About 13 people have been arrested and charged with trying to destabilize Turkmenistan in an emergency. The real reason for the arrest was to show the world the real picture prevailing inside the state. There has been a problem of religious radicalism in Tajikistan since the collapse of the Soviet Union. President Rahmon, by liquidating legally operating religious political parties, has led to the emergence of armed movements seeking to seize power by force. Wider management to weaken after 2000, the Taliban take over poses a threat to the restoration of the potential of the Islamic Renaissance movement of Tajikistan. Therefore, President Rahmon taking preemptive action strengthens the security service control over religion organization and began judging the Salafia movement and the Muslim Brothers. As in neighboring Turkmenistan, the security service has begun extensive indoctrination of border residents. In Uzbekistan, the threat of radicalism is similar to that in Tajikistan, but the authorities in Tashkent have decided to dialogue with the Taliban, preventing their support for the Islamic movement of Uzbekistan. Unlike Tajikistan, President Mirziyoyev hasn't stepped up the fight against religion, but has carried out small liberalization measures to prevent the fundamentalist part of society from growing involved in action against the current government. Such an action was the approval of the willing of head by girls at school. It seems insignificant, but the ban has been in place since the Stalinist era. So a small change has taken on the significance of a historical breakthrough. There were of strategies important for the stabilization in moment presidential election in October 2020. For now, the situation is stable, but the so-called controlled opposition having their representative in the National Assembly, seeing their importance in stabilizing the entire system, they count on concession from the party in power during the next local and statewide election. In terms of external security, I would like to discuss the military potential of individual states, their cooperation with neighbors on regional organization. Officially, the Turkmen army members as many 22,000 soldiers, but it is of low combat value. More than half of the soldiers don't come into contact with weapon on all duty. Turkmenistan army has the most modern equipment of all the countries in the region, but it has no staff at all trained to operate it. The Turkmen army had no way of resisting the aggression of the Taliban, so they decided to break neutrality politic and seek military assistance from the Russian Federation, which sends its border troop near the citizen on Serhetabat and Koytenbag. Tajikistan army is ranked among the 5 worst armies in the world. They have small potential and very older equipment and poor training of officers and soldiers. State security is provided by 201 Russian base with a garrison about 8,000 soldiers. Tajikistan has no means of defending itself against provocation but the Taliban, so they have asked for help from the Russian Federation as an ally with the Collective Security Treaty Organization. The Russians have made communication supplies and combat wakes and available to the Tajik and have strengthened their presence on the border section in Badakhshan Autonomous District. Moscow recognition of Taliban government forced Rahmon to seek other allies. The defeat came with the framework of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, as member states like Russia opted to recognize the new government in Kabul, and Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan had the best trained and most numerous army in the region. Uzbekistan is therefore the only Central Asian country bordering Afghanistan that has the predisposition to repeal the Taliban threat. This led to the rejection of US offer of cooperation to reopen a US military base on their territory, as well as the reunion of a Russian proposal to join the Collective Security Treaty Organization again. Uzbekistan has become more involved in resolving the Afghan problem in the area of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, proposing to include Afghanistan in any political and economic initiative, while gaining the support of Beijing and Moscow. Uzbekistan has also become a creator of regional cooperation toward the Afghan problem. There has been a particular rapprochement with Kazakhstan, which is beginning to reduce the importance of collective security treaty organization in their security policy. An example of this is the holding on Uzbek Kazakh special forces exercises Kalkan 2021, and the training on the border with Afghanistan partnership 2021 without the participation of the Russian Federation. Conclusion, the Taliban takeover led to increased Kazakh-Uzbek cooperation on regional security issues. The weighting of Russian military position in the Central Asia region is also evident. The action of the two largest countries, Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, show that the region is increasing capably of acting independently against external threat. No, however, it is still condemned to depend on the biggest powers, for example, Russian Federation, China, and the USA. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much indeed. That was certainly an interesting presentation because, again, I suppose it presents certain patterns, certain phenomena that we can observe in international relations once there is a major shift in the region or in the world. So I hope we'll have some time to talk about that. Right up next, I think we've got Mr. Karol Starowicz, but I suppose you were also in Korean panel, so I'm not sure if there was some mix-up between the panels.
I was before, and they said you have to be here once again.
Right. So you have
2 times.
So you have 2 times the same panel.
Yes, at the same time. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's
Yeah.
certainly well. Okay. No worries. Obviously, if you were assigned to both panels. Yes, for those of you who watched this presentation on the Korean panel, it is immensely interesting. So yes, so we'll have Mr. Karol Starowicz talking about the future of relations between North and South Korea through the lenses of new administration of United States of America. So yes, 10 minutes if you can.
Of course.
Please.
I will be brief. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The main purpose of my speech is to present a possible foreign policy direction of the current US president towards North Korea. The analysis of the US foreign policy towards the Democratic People's Republic of Korea can lead to the conclusion that the issue of the Kim dynasty nuclear ambitions is an unsolvable problem. Since the first nuclear crisis on the Korean Peninsula in the early 1990s, the North Korea problem has been a challenge for every US administration. And in my opinion, there's good reason to believe that the statement, North Korea remains an enigma, is appropriate to describe the problem of US-North Korea relations. In 2018, Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un began a diplomatic approachment, as we know. In consequence of Singapore summit, Kim publicly agreed to work toward complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, pledging permanent dismantlement of nuclear facilities in Pyongyang. Of course, as the United States takes corresponding measures. Next, the leaders met again in Vietnam in late February 2019, but ended the summit early without making a deal or announcement because of differences over the scope and sequencing of North Korea denuclearization measures in exchange for sanctions relief. The current question is how the US would convince North Korea to come back to negotiation table after Hanoi summit. What Biden will do with the North Korean problem. Finally, can he reach a breakthrough with North Korea? The biggest reason why the US has to resume talks with North Korea is the North's growing nuclear and military capabilities. Today, North Korea has a sizable nuclear arsenal, composed not only of atomic bombs fueled by plutonium or highly enriched uranium, but likely also hydrogen bombs, at least 10 times more powerful than the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Pyongyang has also made remarkable progress with long-range missile technology. Not without reason, the nuclear weapons arsenal is described as a powerful sword in the North Korean military. The Trump era was defined by headline-catching developments from fire and full threats, historical summits, and love letters to hard no deal, because we don't have deal with North Korea. Since the failed North Korea-US summit in Hanoi, Kim has demanded to recognize his country as a nuclear state. Of course, the United States cannot do this because if they recognized North Korea as a nuclear-owned state, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty could immediately break down. The US would never accept this deal, of course, and it could also create a domino effect around the world, encourage other countries to develop nuclear weapons concurrently. In addition, Pyongyang has consistently demanded that the US and South Korea remove the so-called hostile policy as a precondition for any negotiations. And early on May 2021, Joe Biden met Moon Jae-in and promised a practical, gradual, step-by-step approach to denuclearization while maintaining the international sanction regime. Biden and Moon Jae-in have emphasized the importance of the alliance and reaffirmed the common goals in the region, including a peaceful Korean Peninsula with no nuclear missiles. For the US, Republic Korea remains essential part of any peace deal with North Korea, of course. In contrast to Trump, Biden will not intend to take the issue of North Korea's nuclear ambitions personally, but will base future diplomatic efforts on cooperation with Republic of Korea and maybe with Japan. But of course, there may be some differences between allies. The Moon administration has consistently pursued a dialogue, saying it is the only way to build a peaceful Korean peninsula. However, Biden seems very skeptical about it because a successful policy needs carrots as well as sticks. The Biden administration has signaled its willingness to meet with North Korea, but the United States wants particular steps on denuclearization before any sanction relief. And we should remember that North Korea continues to be under heavy economic sanctions, and North Korea demands sanctions relief before any moves to dismantle its nuclear arsenal. Even now, with a new US administration in office, North Korea hasn't been active in seeking channels to resume the stalled talks between two countries. When Biden became the US president, Washington reached out to Pyongyang with detailed messages through multiple channels, but North Korea hasn't responded. The question is how the Biden administration tempts North Korea back to the table. In the past, negotiating a nuclear deal between North Korea and the United States was challenging, since the Kim regime has strong tendency to cheat. Washington was hoping to see Pyongyang cooperate by disarming. However, Pyongyang preferred to reap the benefits of the cooperation without resigning from its deterrent, using it as an insurance. In the result, the diplomatic impasse continues because the two sides cannot find a way to trust each other. However, in this case, in the era of the COVID-19 pandemic, Pyongyang appears more willing to cooperate. In addition, the country is in deep economic trouble, and Kim's unprecedented recognition that North Korea has failed to fulfill the latest economic plan speaks of the gravity of the current situation. The coronavirus pandemic has also taken its toll on the country. Kim desperately needs a moment of stability, making him more likely to agree to meaningful concessions as long as they do not threaten the security of his regime. In the current political circumstances, the only achievable goal for Biden's administration will be return to negotiations, but achieving something more in the course of negotiations seems to be unattainable at the moment. He would need a clear reason to come back to the table. What is more, total denuclearization would be a huge undertaking, and Kim Jong-un is not going to be keen to throw away decades of research. And we have to come to realize that North Korea wants to belong to the club of the nuclear states, no matter what. In this case, the only solution to restrain North Korea from the nuclear development is in my opinion, reversal of American policy. Biden would have to revive multilateral talks, ease sanctions, and commit to concession to negotiation a mutually acceptable deal. And ultimately, the success of a deal will depend on the ability of North Korea and the United States to overcome the mutual distrust. In this case, negotiations with North Korea are showing how difficult it is to create sustained trust and dialogue between the countries. This mutual distrust has doomed past efforts to settle a deal between the United States and North Korea. In conclusions, I would like to say the history shows that there are no perfect outcomes between the United States and North Korea. For the Biden's administration, diplomacy is preferred as the primary instrument for dealing with the North Korea nuclear challenge. But we have to come to realize the clock is ticking to the US disadvantage. Will Biden convince Kim to give up nuclear weapons? Will Kim make any concessions? These questions remain an unanswered mystery so far. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this presentation. Well, thank you for that being very brief, but yet full of information. I've been always wondering about Kim's policy? Is it more calculated to achieve some certain goal, or is it just more opportunistic? So just, in a sense, maybe a bit Machiavellian, looking to extract every opportunity that he gets and trying not to keep his end of the bargain.
And of course, we have to say there's no goodwill to solve this problem.
Yeah, of course. And North Korea actually, I think, doesn't have any downside to any solution, because if they get something from US, well, that's good. If they don't get anything, well, they will survive somehow with Russian and probably Chinese support to some extent. Yes, right. Thank you very much for that. That was very, very interesting. And if I'm not mistaken, we've got Muzafer Kural with us. Muzafer, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Right. We at the very beginning we weren't sure if you will join us. So due to the time restrictions, I'm afraid you'll have to keep your presentation as short as possible. So
sure.
I'm sorry for that, but well, that's the unfortunate events.
Mm-hmm.
So well, 10 minutes maximum. So maybe we can extract a couple of minutes for some conversation before the next panel starts. But I can't promise that. So Muzafer, the floor
I will be as quick as possible.
Right. Don't make me, maybe not be too quick, but sorry, I didn't mean to rush you. Relax, don't worry.
Okay. Well, in this, first of all, thank you so much for everybody. And I would like to talk about a dispute over the islands between United Arab Emirates and Iran in the Persian Gulf. And first of all, Persian Gulf is a very important Gulf. It is the third largest one in the world, with strategic position, geopolitical location, and energy sources. One of the most significant features of the Persian Gulf region is containing many islands, as we know. These islands have a decisive influence on the borderland among the states of the region. Of course, with the beginning of 20th century, having ownership over the islands has become more important, and because they determine maritime boundaries, which means control of offshore oil and gas deposits. Therefore, the ownership of islands in the Gulf has been disputed between, my presentation is about United Arab Emirates and Iran. That's why I talk about these two countries, but actually it is a problem between Iran and other Arab countries as well. So in this context, I will try to answer a research question, which is, how does United Arab Emirates confront occupation of 3 islands by Iran in the Persian Gulf? These 3 islands, as we know, Greater Ton, Lesser Ton, and Abu Musa. And as a result, my hypothesis is the creation of artificial islands by United Arab Emirates narrows the Iran's maneuvering area. And here is briefly talking about 2 countries, because presentation is about 2 countries. The Islamic Republic of Iran is one of the regional power in the region, without a doubt. And with the announcement of the British withdrawal from the Gulf region, Iran occupied these 3 islands, namely, as I mentioned, Abu Musa, Greater Ton, and Lesser Ton. Of course, these islands are strategically important at the entrance of the Persian Gulf. Because of the islands are still de facto under Iranian control, the dispute between Iran and United Arab Emirates continues. So here I would like you to give a look just to the presentation. As you see, here is Greater Ton and this is Lesser Ton. It is even not visible in the map, but of course it has a unique importance. And this is the Abu Musa, these 3 very small islands. And here with the next slide, now I think it is more visible with zoom. They are in the entrance of the Strait of the Hormuz. It is very important region in the world actually, because more than half of the petrol to the international market is flowing through this small area, as we see. And according to international law, there is every country has 12 miles of their hinterland, which means the border of the sea starting from the territorial border, 12 miles just. And taking into consideration these 3 islands here, it's automatically and naturally enlarge the shepherd of the Iran in the sea. So the question is, and times to times, Iran is blackmailing international society, even great powers America, by blocking the Strait of the Hormuz. And what will happen if they block? Of course, when 50% of the petrol cannot flow to the international market, it will touch the life of every person in the world, simply. Actually, in 1952, once Iran did it during Mossadegh administration, and then we saw what happened to Iran. And with a military coup, he was toppled simply. And today, I don't think that Iran will have such a crazy idea again. But geopolitically, it shows how important it is. So on the other hand, coming to United Arab Emirates, it is one of the smallest countries of the region, but at the same time, one of the strongest countries. And the United Arab Emirates has always been under threat of the Iran since its emergence as an independent state, gaining from Britain. To confront the de facto occupation of these three islands by Iran, the United Arab Emirates has been creating artificial islands for commercial reasons in the recent years. But of course, we know that it is not only related with commercial reasons. So first of all, here we have to define what does mean artificial island. Artificial islands simply refer to the islands that are constructed by human beings, which are not naturally there, rather formed by humans. So here is important to underline that given geopolitical significance of the Persian Gulf, the abundance of energy sources, and military importance of this enclosed body of water has attracted special attention. So, so far these artificial islands which were created by United Arab Emirates, I categorize in three categories. And the first one is Palm and World, which is taking the names from palm tree simply, and it is constructed by American and British companies. The second one is Al-Qasr, I don't know, do I pronounce correctly, constructed by Emirate of Ras Al Khaimah. The third one is Al-Najm, which is constructed by Emirate of Sharjah. So in total, so far, we have more than 300 artificial islands in the Persian Gulf. That's a lot, 300. So with the construction of these artificial islands, the distance between United Arab Emirates and Abu Musa is decreases less than 10 kilometers. So it is a matter can be used to harm Iranian interests, which means narrowing Iranian sphere of influence in the future, even including waging a war. Sorry for that. So here, once again, coming back to here, as you see, these are islands and here is the United Arab Emirates territory. So simply they are here, let's say. They have more sphere of influence than Iran has. So coming back, as a conclusion, the enlargement of United Arab Emirates to coastal lands from 650 kilometers to 1,000 kilometers. So naturally, 350 kilometers longer border territory for United Arab Emirates, which is huge. The second, providing political grounds for narrowing Iran's range of motion and also increasing presence of foreign and military and non-military forces in the region, because these islands are not just a piece of land staying there. And regional countries are deploying military forces there. And of course, with intelligences, with other, everything can happen there in these islands. Therefore, it is a huge concern for Iran. And this dispute is still going on. And in the future, it is even promoted by other countries to create this. So we are on the end of time. I would like to thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Muzaffar. I must say I've been anticipating this speech because we haven't talked for a pretty long time. So thanks for being here and thanks for that interesting presentation. So unfortunately, as it usually happens, we are out of time. I had plenty of questions to each participant, so maybe I'll just go through them briefly what I wanted to ask as a discussant. So I wanted to ask Ms. Potera about the clear conflict of interest or contradiction between values that the European Union is trying to impose and at the same time offering some sort of benefits to the countries of ASEAN. So the question is, what would happen if those values were not unanimously accepted? That would be very interesting, I think. I wanted to ask Ms. Rajo about the problem with actually getting funding for this participatory budget. So I wanted to ask, so if the 20% of the budget is being given to the citizens, actually, that would mean that 80%, the 80% would need to be extended to cover for all the last of the services if the source of funding would come from the municipality. So I wanted to ask about that. To Ms. Bandurina, I wanted to ask about the legacy of Yasir Arafat and if Mr. Abbas is actually continuing his line with the Israeli-Palestinian struggle. That would be, I'm sure that would be interesting to hear your answer to that. To Mr. Pahutsky-Wosek, I wanted to ask about the state of security apparatus in Central Asian countries, because you talked a lot about military and about border control, but I would be very interested to hear about the condition of the interior security apparatus and their preparedness to deal with the conflict. So with probably migration from Afghanistan and keeping the inside state safe. To Mr. Starovich again about the what is happening in North Korea in terms of planning and governance. Does Kim Jong-un actually have some goals? Can we find what he's actually up to, or is his actions just opportunistic and he's getting what he can without any downside? And again, to Muzaffer, if we had some more time, I would ask about the role of Gulf Cooperation Council in all of that. So is actually the Saudi Arabia and other members of GCC countries supporting actions of United Arab Emirates? We all remember the Qatar split and the problems that Qatari had with Saudis. And now this seems to be over. But I wanted I intended to ask about this GCC involvement in that. Sadly, ladies and gentlemen, we don't have any more time. Thank you all for your wonderful cooperation. Thanks for all the insight. And well, thanks for taking time to join us for our yearly conference. I do hope that we'll see each other next year. I hope in person, but in this or in another way, I'm sure we will meet again. So thank you very much indeed. And I would like to also invite you to join the next panel, which will be a panel dedicated for graduate students as well. So again, thank you very much indeed, and see you very soon.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.